So let us quickly pray. Father in heaven, we thank you for this wonderful day that you've permitted us to see. We ask you to bless us and help us to learn a little bit more about you each and every day. In Jesus Christ's name I pray, amen. So, as you know, tomorrow will be Mother's Day proper. Last week was actually Lithuanian Mother's Day, so technically we were still celebrating Mother's Day, although it wasn't in the U.S. at least. It seems that every country has a different day they wish to celebrate Mother's Day. So, most times when people talk about Mother's Day, they always talk about Proverbs 31, who can find a virtuous woman? And after hearing this for about a good long time, I can sort of repeat it verbatim. So I say, well, why am I going to talk about a virtuous woman again? We get it. Women are virtuous. Mothers are virtuous. I get it. That's easy. But in all my years of study, a couple things stood out to me. And that is, Pastor talked about, how the job of a mother when it comes to the Lord. And I want to go a little bit deeper than that on the physical side of things. And it makes me realize that there's a lot that goes on that a lot of us are not always privy to, but it's still very interesting. So the next few slides that I show out of respect. Everything stays 13. And this is just to give us a little bit of understanding of what else goes on. So we know in the book of Genesis, Adam said, this is bone of my bones, flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, taken out of man. Therefore shall man leave his father and mother and shall cleave unto his wife and become one flesh. I do not think I need to explain that. Do I? Exactly. And as you see here, yes, if you have two parents, potential parents, you get a child. Easy. That's how God designed it, I assume. However, this is where all the similarities stop. As you can see, no offense to us gentlemen, this part is kind of easy to make. And we about make 200 to 300 million a day. However, for women, this is quite difficult, and they only make one a month. Many of you know what that means. I will not explain further. And the question is, well, why does it take so long to make one egg a month? And this is why. So if you take a look at cells are super small. And we measure cells in micrometers. That's how small they are, that the naked eye cannot even see them. This is a red blood cell, one of the small cells in our body. This is about 8 micrometers, although I've seen larger ones sometimes. Neutrophils are white blood cells. These are about 12 microliters. But then look at this egg, about 100 times larger than any cell in the human body, about 100 micrometers in diameter. To the point where, with a little bit of filtering, you could actually see it in the naked eye. And that is what this video here shows. So this here, what I'm showing you, is a video of an actual egg cell. We're using a water droplet to magnify it. This is a cluster of 10 egg cells. I'm just showing this to you so you can see just how large an egg cell is for humans. Frog egg cells are, I think, 10 times larger than that, about maybe a couple millimeters. Actually, maybe 1 centimeter in diameter, if I remember correctly, but I need to check that. But we can't do this with any other cell in the body. And the question becomes, well, why does it take so long, and why is the egg so huge? Well, the reason behind that is, it's what's inside the egg that counts. In every egg is a bunch of nutrients that will be used for the new life that will be conceived, and a whole bunch of factors that are needed to ensure correct development of a baby. And this is found in every single egg. So what happens is that the human body has to pour so much energy into making just one of these. And to the point that it actually develops what are known as follicles, the same things that your hair comes from. And you have this mass layer of cells that all they do is just to deposit nutrients into a growing egg. And this takes about a month each time to do, on average. Some people do have twins. So what's really important here to point out is what's known as this little circle here. And this circle is known as the corona radiata. So it is actually a single layer of cells that surrounds the egg. And all it does is, one, prevent it from dividing, and two, it also basically supplies it with proteins, carbohydrates, fats, and so forth. Even certain genes that need to be active during development, it makes sure those genes are active to allow for healthy development of a baby. And what you can see here is basically what it actually looks like under a microscope. So this is a section of an ovary, and this is actually zoomed into one follicle. You can see, here's the egg right here, and here is this giant follicle that is housing the egg. This follicle ruptures at a appointed time, and for those of you who are women, you know what that means. But what is interesting about this is that basically what a mother is doing is inadvertently, through no choice of her own, sadly, preparing the way for any potential life, because they have to do this each and every month. But that's not the worst part. For those of you, I do recommend that you strictly apologize to your mothers, because all of you have done this. So when fertilization happens and there is a new life, this new life undergoes a process called implantation, where it goes into the uterus. And what the new embryo does is that it basically makes a tiny little hole and starts digging into the lining. And it digs a little closer until it gets close to a few blood vessels, lets those blood vessels bleed, and that's how it gets nutrients. The problem is the human body doesn't like foreign objects, and the mother would honestly think that the kid is foreign. So to prevent against that, the embryo forms a little barrier here known as the syncytial tropoblast. Syncytio means working together. So this is a whole bunch of cells that basically work as one. And this cell basically forms a barrier between the mother and the child. And it is through this barrier that nutrients are given. It is through this barrier that waste is excreted. And it's through this barrier that the mother's body knows, let me not destroy this. This is real. Let me not destroy this. And what happens is, as this syncytial tropoblast grows, there are cells known as the cytotropoblasts that actually divide to keep the syncytial tropoblast active, is how the actual placenta is formed over a couple of days. So all this has to happen in order for the correct development of a child. And only one of these processes can go wrong to make the entire thing go wrong. So mothers have to pave the way each and every chance if they decide. Now, the problem is this isn't only found in humans, it's actually found in other animals too. This is an example of a fly, the fruit fly, known as Drosophila melanogaster, but these are the flies that usually destroy your fruits. Now, the funny thing about these eggs that the flies produce is that these eggs contain what are known as maternal effect genes, genes that only the mother is responsible for. And basically, there are nurse cells here that basically secrete proteins that allow for the correct development of the fly. So even before the fly egg is fertilized, it already knows what is supposed to be the head and already knows what is supposed to be the tail. This is actually a good example of it. You have nurse cells here they secrete what's known as RNA, and this basically tells the egg before it's even developed, this is the head and this is the tail. The same thing actually happens on the opposite side with a different protein where it says this is the tail and this is the head. So if there's any problem in the mother fly, this process does not happen correctly through no fault of the fly. And we also actually can find this in frogs as well. So if you notice, these eggs look like moons. One side is black and one side is white. These are what we called activated eggs. And the same process applies, that what the mother frog does inadvertently, or actually unconsciously at this point, is that it sets up the potential frog to know which side is the head, which side is the tail, which side is the front, and which side is the back. In frogs, we consider this the animal pole and the vegetable pole. So the animal pole is the black part and the vegetable pole is the white part. And as you see from the animal pole, we can get the skin, we can get the nervous system. Between it, we can get the muscles, we can get the kidneys, and from the vegetable pole, we can actually get the lungs and even the digestive system. So in nature, what we have found is that the job of a mother in producing these eggs is very, very complex. But this environment needs to be set up correctly for the correct generation of a child. And it got me thinking, well, if mothers can do this, how much more does God do for each and every one of us? The Bible says, before I formed you, I knew you. Not only that, in John 1, it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Here's a question. Did God not allow Jesus to pave the way for us as a second chance in life? And if we think about everything that Christ has done, he lived, he died, but not even before that, he sent John the Baptist as a forerunner to talk about Jesus. So many prophets, even Isaiah, prophesied of what Jesus will do when he comes here. How each and every setup back then with the children of Israel was to set up for the ultimate sacrifice that was Christ. That itself is the preparation of a new environment. We always consider baptism, in a sense, the death of our old self and the rebirth of a new self that comes to God. But if we think about it, God had to set up that environment for each and every one of us. So that way we would be able, one, to understand him. That two, we would be able to know who he is. And B, when he comes to us, we will be able to apply that knowledge and draw ourselves closer to him. Is that not correct? And it is through that reason God paves ways for each and every one of us. Through our testimonies, he paves ways. Through the experiences we have in our lives, he paves ways. Sometimes he may use us to be a stepping stone to somebody else. That is also paving a way. The difference between when a mother does it and when God does it is that a mother's body has zero choice in the matter. It automatically does it through no fault of her own. But God makes the conscious effort to appear to each and every one of us. And that is the difference. And anytime I think about that, all I can say is, thank God. As you've known many times, when I preach, I bring a very scientific part to how I preach. And the reason why is in Psalm 19, it says, the heavens declare the glory of God and the firmament shows the handiwork. And I'm of a firm belief that everything on this life exists to glorify God. So when I learn new things, when I see new proteins, when I read what people discover and they find new things about ourselves and about life in general, all I can say is it's great that there is a God who thought about each and every one of these things and also has given us the opportunity to discover them bit by bit, as if saying, let me show you a little bit of how I created things. Let me show you a little bit of how I said, be fruitful and multiply. Let me show you how I generate new life. Let me show you how I generate new souls. Let me show you when I say before you were formed, I knew who you were. Let me show you why I knew you. Because if you take a look at development, if you take a look at so many different factors of science, they are so intricately woven that you realize someone had to take that time to pave the way. And I will say thank you, mothers, for your unconscious choice in paving the way for each and every one of us. Again, we apologize for what we've put you through for those 9 months, through no fault of your own and no fault of ours. But let it serve as a reminder for the conscious effort that God does to pave the way for each and every one of us. Thank you.